I didn't hear anything.
Okay. I'm going to ask everyone to take their seats. I have 7:01. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Mr. Stewart, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin? Here. Counselor Limerman? Here. Counselor Merriday? Mayor Soulsby?
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We'll now have a presentation. Cottage Grove Police Department, special recognition, Chief Chase.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm honored to come before you guys tonight to present this recognition to the Lane County Sheriff's Office for their partnership and collaboration since I became your chief here back in September of 2023. So during my first 14 months, as you all know, we've had some significant staffing challenges. We were only recently able to fill our detective position, and during the last year or so, we've had some pretty significant incidents that have happened here in Cottage Grove, and we've relied heavily on our partners at the Lane County Sheriff's Office and in particular their investigations or detective division. And when we have called them, they have really just been right there when we need them. They come when we call. They show up with their experience and expertise and help guide our young staff through some of these really, really complex investigations. And without them, we would not have been able to bring some of these cases to resolution. So I'm really thankful for the partnership that we've built, that I've been able to build with the Sheriff's Office, and in particular, Sheriff Harold, who's here tonight. He's been more than willing to step up and help and just kind of be somebody for me as a mentor and as a friend here in the law enforcement community. So I can't say enough good things about the Lane County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Harold and their detective division. So with that, I would like to present the detectives investigation unit with a plaque tonight. And I'm going to read it first, and then I'll ask their sergeant to come up and his team to come up here and accept this on behalf of the Sheriff's Office. So this just says, in recognition of exemplary investigations and partnership, and it's awarded to the Lane County Sheriff's Office Investigations Unit for outstanding dedication and excellence in investigations and unwavering commitment to service in support of the Cottage Grove Police Department. Your contributions have made a significant impact in the Cottage Grove community and helped our agency through a period of transition. We are grateful for your support and service to the citizens of Cottage Grove. With deep appreciation and gratitude, Corey Chase, Chief of Police, 2024. So that I would ask for sitting up here, 17. Yes. Like to present.
Thank you. Well, for the first time that I can remember, we actually did not have anyone sign up to speak as appearance of interested citizens tonight. We have no public hearings. Consent agenda.
Move that the council approve the consent agenda items.
I second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Resolutions and ordinances. Item A, resolution approving the loan agreement with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. Public Works Director, Mr. Stewart.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to make it a second to get to my agenda item here. I'm trying to do a couple duties here.
Director Stewart is filling in for our city recorder too, so he has a big job tonight.
Okay, thank you. So Mayor and Council, this evening I have before you an item to approve a loan agreement with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. So back in November of 2023, city staff submitted an application to the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund for $300,000 to fund a new stormwater master plan. On July 31st, 2024, city staff received the intent to award the loan from the DEQ. The documents had stated at that time the $300,000 loan amount, along with 25% debt forgiveness, was approved. Staff worked with the DEQ over the following months to provide information to increase the debt forgiveness and supply additional documentation. On October 30th, the city received a loan document to review and approve. In reviewing the document, staff discovered the loan was for $150,000 and not $300,000 as what was requested. City staff met with the DEQ staff and discussed the documents and the difference in the loan amount approved versus the amount of the application. At that time, DEQ staff shared that there was a misunderstanding among the DEQ staff and that they were working to provide 100% debt forgiveness for the stormwater master plan. The DEQ combined the $150,000 grant along that the city council received and approved at the previous city council meeting. And along with this proposed $150,000 loan would offer the 100% debt forgiveness to fully fund the stormwater master plan with no cost to the city. The city has until June 30th, 2028 to complete the master plan, and staff is currently working on an engineering request for proposals to complete a new master plan. The attached resolution approves the loan document number R24574 with DEQ to partially fund the stormwater master plan project, which includes 100% debt forgiveness, and authorizes the city manager to sign the agreement. It's staff's recommendation that the city council adopt the resolution.
Any questions? Councilor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you. Does the loan forgiveness include interest that would be incurred on the 150,000?
Mayor and Councilor Lammerman, that's my understanding that they're waiving the interest and the loan in its entirety, so there'll be no cost to the city.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a resolution number?
Resolution number.
Yes, so the clean water loan number is 2155.
I move that the council adopt resolution number 2155, approving the loan amount, loan agreement number 574 with DEQ to partially fund the Stormwater Master Plan project, which includes 100% debt forgiveness, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement.
A second.
We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Counselor Meredith,
Aye.
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Mayor Salisbury.
Aye. Motion unanimous. Resolution B, to waive employment increase requirement and approve tax abatement extension requests for years 4 and 5 in the Cottage Grove, Cresswell, and South Lane Enterprise Zone for Warehousers Cottage Grove Sawmill. Public Works Director, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening I have before you a resolution to waive employment increase requirement and approve the tax abatement extension request for years 4 and 5 in the Cottage Grove, Cresswell, and South Lane Enterprise Zone for Warehousers Cottage Grove Sawmill. I'd like to share that we have with us this evening, we have the mill manager, Brent Chavon, and we also have the governmental affairs director, Betsy Earls. They will be joining us here shortly to share some comments. So Weyerhaeuser Company, it has applied for a tax abatement benefits under the enterprise program for $120,000 in plant and equipment improvements at the Cottage Grove Sawmill located at 77629 Highway 99 South. The project will be completed in 2 phases over the next 3 years. Phase 1 will be a $60 million project, upgrading the log processing equipment. This phase is estimated to be completed in late 2025 or early 2026. Phase 2 is estimated to be an additional $60 million investment to occur from 2026 to 2027. Typically, an investment of $50,000 or more and an increase in employment by 10% is required to be eligible for the enterprise zone benefits. However, the state legislature, when it created the enterprise zone program, anticipated there may be times when an increase in employment level would not occur. The enterprise zone provision under ORS 285C.155 and 285C.200 subsection 2, the enterprise zone sponsor may provide by resolution for authorization to an eligible business firm such that it may qualify for the exemption or unqualified property in the zone without increasing the zone employment as normally required if the firm's total investment in qualified property costs exceed $25 million. And there's a second provision that could be used is also that it increases the production. And furthermore, under 285C.200 subsection 2BA, and it maintains a mandatory minimum level of 80% of its annual average full-time employment of 225 full-time employees in the zone. And it satisfies other reasonable requirements as the zone sponsor may also establish. Weyerhaeuser qualifies for the employment waiver as they are proposing an investment of $120 million or more. In addition to the waiver, Weyerhaeuser is requesting an extension of the tax abatement for 2 additional years for the total of 5 years. ORS 285C.160 allows for an agreement between the firm and the enterprise zone sponsors to for additional period of exemption not to exceed an additional 2 years. During the additional 2 years, Weyerhaeuser will be required to pay its employees the average annual wage for years 4 and 5 be equal to or greater than the current county wage. And they must also pay an average compensation that equals 150% of the county average county wage in all years for all new employees. ORS 285C.162 requires Weyerhaeuser to provide a school support fee to South Lane School District for years 4 and 5 of the approved exemption. on November 4th, 2024, South Lane School District adopted a 15% rate for the school support fee. Weyerhaeuser will be required to pay 15% of its total tax savings directly to South Lane School Districts for years 4 and 5 of the approved exemption. I would also share that that money going to the school district will be declared to the state of Oregon, and the amount of money that's appropriated to the school district for each student will be reduced by the amount of the 15%. I just call that out because the school support fee kind of lends you to believe that the school is getting additional dollars over and above what they would receive. In essence, the payment directly to the school district reduces the burden upon the state legislature or the state to come up with additional funding. So it really supports the state and not the school district. In addition to the school support fee, Weyerhaeuser will contribute a total of 10% of each year's annual tax savings to the South Lane School District and the Cottage Grove Community Medical Center Fund. The South Lane School District will receive 75% of the contribution, and the Cottage Grove Community Medical Center will receive 25%. And how that will be done is Weyerhaeuser proposing to create a community benefit fee that will be established at the Cottage Grove Community Foundation. The intent of these resources, they will make their 10% payment into that fund, and then the Community Foundation will just distribute the earnings, 75% of the earnings each year to the school district and 25% to the Cottage Grove Hospital. And I'd point out that there's no restrictions. Those resources are able to be used however those two entities choose to utilize them in their organization. For the approval of the employment waiver and the tax abatement extension agreement, all three enterprise zone sponsors will be required to approve the resolution. The Crestwell City Council unanimously approved the resolution 2024-26 on November 12th, approving the employment waiver and the extension of abatement for an additional 2 years for a total of 5 years. Lane County Board of Commissioners will consider the waiver and the extension at their December 3rd, 2024 meeting. So at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Saban and Ms. Earls up, and they welcome to make some statements they have prepared. Did it come on? No? There we go.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Soulsby and members of the council. As introduced, my name is Brent Chabon. I am the Weyerhaeuser Cottage Grove Sawmill Mill Manager, appearing before you to discuss our application for an extended enterprise zone tax abatement and a waiver of employment requirements. We very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about the upgrades that we are planning for our facility to the south. As background, Weyerhaeuser has been operating in Oregon since 1904, and we currently have over 600 employees employed throughout Lanes County. Weyerhaeuser Cottage Grove Mill has a long history in the community. We've been in operation since 1957 and currently employ 225 people in well-paying family wage jobs. As you may know, the mill makes green Douglas fir dimensional lumber, which is primarily sold to wholesalers and distribution centers. The mill is undergoing a series of upgrades that has allowed us to increase the capacity of our production volume. The modernization will decrease operational expenses, improving our competitive position, and allow us to operate far into the future. The upgrade will also improve safety for our workers on the upgraded lines. Although not part of the application, you should know that the project's initial phase helped us prepare to trim, sort, and stack the expected capacities. This phase represented an investment of $36 million and was completed in February of 2024. The current phase of the mill modernization began in late August. In this phase, we're installing a new log processing line at the cost of around $60 million. The new log processing line will tie into the mill's existing primary breakdown. Once the new log processing line is operational, the existing log processing line is planned to be demolished and replaced with a new primary breakdown line. The final phase of the mill modernization will be upgrading the primary breakdown and residuals lines at a cost of, again, $60 million. This phase will be constructed offline and connect between the new trim sort stack line and the new log processing line that is being installed in prior phases. The application includes the cost of the current and next phase of this project. The Cottage Grove mill competes with other Weyerhaeuser mills for resources needed for upgrades, and we have made a significant efforts to secure approval of these investments. A key consideration for Weyerhaeuser when allocating resources is a mill's longstanding presence in the community, and in our case, our long history in the area and our employees' strong ties to the community were significant factors in the decision to fund these projects. As is the case with many businesses in the area, hiring workers for the mill continues to be challenging. The local labor market is limited, and there aren't many people with the specialized skills that we need. These hiring difficulties make our planned upgrades even more crucial. By incorporating advanced automation and improving our processes, we can maintain high productivity and quality with our current workforce. We hope that this will ensure the mill's continued success and stability, even if the current workforce shortages persist. Additionally, the investment in updated technology improves the safety of our people by taking hands out of the process, allowing the machine to do the work for us. Moreover, the urgency of supporting this mill through extended tax abatements is heightened by the recent closure of several other mills in our state over the past year. These closures have significantly impacted their local economies. By approving our request for extended tax abatements, you will help us to counteract these negative effects, providing stable, well-paying jobs and contributing to the economic resilience of our region. We are deeply committed to the community. Our employees are your neighbors, and their well-being is directly tied to the ongoing stability of the mill and the economic health of this region. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions?
Mayor, if I might, I would just add there was a couple questions at our Friday work session. One of them, Councilor Meriday asked the number of Cottage Grove employees that work at the mill site, and it's my understanding today that there's 127 employees with the Cottage Grove address. The second question was requested by Councilor Lammerman in discussion about some opportunities to assist with some of the items that are Cottage Grove city centric. In discussions earlier this morning with myself, Mr. Sauerwein, and Saban, and Ms. Earls, that there is an opportunity that they can contribute to items such as road repairs that are significantly caused by their timberlands movement equipment, and those opportunities. There's an opportunity for me to work with them on some of our projects in the future. So that was, I hope, an answer, Councilor Lammerman, to some of your requests earlier on Friday.
Councilor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, thank you. No offense, but I forgot your name. I'm horrible with names. So question real quick, with the school support fee, it was 15%, and then there was the additional requirements. It was stated during our Friday agenda session that that was the additional requirement was something that you were doing that Weyerhaeuser was doing on their own accord. So I'm just wanting to clarify, since I have you here and Mr. Stewart here, that there's a 15% school support fee and then an additional 10% of that year's tax savings. That will be split between the school district and then the Community Medical Center Foundation. Is that extra 10% something that the enterprise zone is requiring Weyerhaeuser to contribute? Or is that something that you're choosing to contribute as Weyerhaeuser Corp?
Mayor Soulsby, Councilman Lammerman, the additional 10% for the 5-year period is something that we're doing on our own accord. It is not something that is required by the tax abatement request.
And this is also not something required by the enterprise zone?
I do not believe so, sir.
Okay, then I guess it's a terminology issue with the paperwork because it says local additional requirements.
No one has placed that requirement upon us.
Okay. Now, with that being said, is there, since it's something that you guys are choosing to do as a business, could there be any way we could suggest, or I could, that instead of giving South Lane an additional amount of money, which from the sounds of it would also cause their funds to lower some from the state because they're getting more money, could we shift that 7.5% that would be going to them additionally into a road improvement fund or public safety fund or something like that, but mainly looking into like a road improvement fund to help with some of the road infrastructure from some of the degradation from the commercial traffic that goes to and from the Weyerhaeuser.
So Mayor Soulsby and Councilman Lammerman, if I may clarify, I believe that you may be joining two items that are not joined. The 15% for year 4 and 5 is required by the state, which is 15% of whatever the tax base is that would become. That gets paid directly to South Lane School District, and then they rebate or reimburse the state for that differential. So we're really covering what the state would pay South Lane School District. The additional 10% for the 5 years that we've proposed is over and above the 15%, and there is no rebate that is applied for that. They get what our intent was to create an endowment with the Cottage Grove Community Foundation, where those funds would be placed in an endowment fund, and then on an annual basis there would be whatever earnings were made by that endowment would be given back at 75 and 25%. So there's no 7% that I think I heard you talk about.
So that the 7.5% was just a basis off of the total 10% of the additional, due to the breakdown of 75% of that would go to South Lane, the other 25, just in a percentage aspect, that's 7.5%. So the main question would be, would there be any way to shift that money to another program or another way to benefit the community as a whole?
I do not believe so with what we have proposed so far to the 3 different agencies in the school division. We would have to replow the ground that we've already plowed and obtain the approvals that we've already managed to bring to ourselves. What I can offer, and what was spoke to this afternoon or this morning with Mr. Stewart, is that we would be willing to work with the city in a couple of different capacities. We have an organization who is skilled at lobbying and applying for grants, we would be willing to offer those services to the city if they would be so inclined. And we would also, as we mentioned to Mr. Stewart, approach our organization and see what kind of funding could be made available in order to do some portion of cost sharing for the roads that we use. But I would offer that my preference would be to be able to go to the December 3rd meeting and have this proposal accepted as it is.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. Look forward to potentially working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to share my appreciation for you guys being here tonight. Realizing that, we as a city have no stake in this other than it, we are one of the enterprise jurisdictions. And I think it's a testament what you guys are doing to the long-term commitment that you have to Cottage Grove. I know personally just witnessing your commitment, and just want to share appreciation for that. And hope to have a long-standing continued mutually beneficial relationship between Weyerhaeuser and the city of Cottage Grove going forward. I appreciate Councilor Lammerman's advocacy for the city. And I know you share that sentiment. And so I look forward to seeing what we can do there as well as we go forward. But thank you both for being here. And we really, want to see Weyerhaeuser succeed in this area, because the community succeeds together with that partnership. So thank you. And is it the same resolution number or the one up from that?
2-1, what would it be?
5-6.
5-6, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would make a motion that the council adopt resolution 2156, which would waive the employment increase requirements and approve the tax abatement extension request for years 4 and 5 in the Cottage Grove, Cresswell, and South Lane Enterprise Zone for Weyerhaeuser's Cottage Grove Sawmill.
We have a motion. Second. We have a motion with a second. Will the recorder please, any more discussion? Before we move on, I want to say thank you to Brent. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and kind of give us some clarification on all these. And we do really appreciate Weyerhaeuser's dedication to this community. And I did have one quick question about the community foundation. And will that go, it's going to be an endowment, and will it be the community foundation that decides where the grants or where the benefits go for the children? Is this for like all school projects, or how is that going to be distributed?
Thank you, Mayor Soulsby. So it is an endowment, and we would look to fund it to whatever the tax increase percentages are. And on an annual basis, we would see a remittance come from OCF. And it is our intention to put as few strings on that as possible and to make it as simple to manage so that no one has to make decisions. So it's our intention that the South Lane School District would get 75% of whatever the remittance is on an annual basis to spend as they see fit, or to put in a savings account if they so wish, in order to build up for a larger activity that they would like to fund for the school district. And we have the same intention with the hospital, that they move forward with their percentages and as they see fit to keep the hospital in either improving and continuing to contribute or to grow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Urban.
So this business about the state imposing a backhanded way to fund themselves through this and not benefit the community is something that is aggravating. I think it's been well laid out for us to see, and it's on my growing list of things to communicate with our state legislator about. So I would invite collaboration in that effort. Would love to make a field trip, fellow council members, to say this is nonsense and these businesses would like to do more in the community, in their local communities, but look how much is being deferred to no end. So in spite of that, still going above and beyond. So thank you once again. But
Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to share with the council too that I greatly appreciate Weyerhaeuser since I've been here in this position the last 7.5 years. They've been an incredible partner. When the city was looking for a place to store bridge beams that are 115 feet long, Weyerhaeuser graciously has offered us a place to store those until we can build a bridge across the Coast Fork River there at Cleveland, which hopefully we might see happen in the next few years. Because we didn't have a place for it and those beams were free. So they allowed us to be able to take advantage of those. And if we weren't able to have found a home for those beams to sit until we build them, we would have lost out on what essentially is $1 million cost to the city by us being able to get those beams for free, have a place to store them. That at that time, the estimated cost of those concrete beams were nearly $1 million. I'd also share that when our log picnic structure that needed to be tore down because it was rotting over at Prospector Park, at that time, Mayor Gowing was on the council and he was aware of a structure that Weyerhaeuser had up at one of his tree land properties and approached them, and Weyerhaeuser donated at no cost to the city of Cottage Grove that structure, and we tore it down and re-resurrected it. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, without that gracious gift, we would not have been in a position to replace that log structure. So they are an incredible partner for our community and the surrounding area. I thank them for that, and I do have full confidence that as we find things that we can partner with in the future, they'll be there to look at those opportunities.
Thank you. Director Stewart, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Irvin,
aye.
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Merity,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Item C, resolution approving the purchase and upfit of 3 police vehicles for the police department from Tonkin Hillsborough Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram and authorize financing. Finance Director, Ms. Roberta Likens.
Use. 2 of the vehicles have been delivered and outfitted with a 3rd vehicle to follow. The financing proposals were due last Thursday, November 21st. Only 1 proposal was received, that being from U.S. Bank for Government Leasing and Finance. The interest rate proposed is 4.81% for a loan period of 60 months. Prepayment is allowed after 13 months at 103% of the remaining principal balance. Payments are to be made quarterly. Base price for each vehicle is $42,485.80, with upfit costs of $19,566.52 per vehicle. A resolution was prepared for your consideration and provided at the agenda session last Friday. Staff is recommending that the council consider the resolution for adoption, authorizing the financing of the police vehicles with U.S. Bank for
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would make a motion, assuming that we are going in sequential order, of resolution 2157, which would authorize the financing of the police vehicles to be upfitted with the proposed financing institutions. I believe that captures all of the necessary parts of the motion, if I'm right. Yep.
We have a motion.
I second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? I see none. Director Stewart, can you please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin,
Aye.
Counselor Lamberman,
Aye.
Counselor Meredith,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Business from the City Council. Item A, 2024 Municipal Court Report. Mr. Sauerwein.
Evening, Your Honor, members of the council. At this time, I would just recognize our municipal court judge, Martin Fisher.
There we go again. So thank you again. And I don't want to read my report verbatim. I assume everybody got a copy of it, and I'll be taking your questions here in a moment. Just wanted to hit a few highlights, which one of the most encouraging aspects of this report that I found was finally seeing the uptick in traffic citations. It's finally paying off. The police department has restaffed. They've got officers on board. There's been some ebb and flow as people are going to the academy and coming back, but that seems to be leveling off, and it looks like numbers are increasing, and I would expect that to continue for the future. We do seem to be on traffic. We seem to be back to 2019 levels. I think ideally we'd like to get back to the 2022-ish levels, but progress is progress. Secondary, there was in rereading the data about criminal citations, and there's a number of crimes that are just inexplicably plummeted. But I didn't want to leave the impression that it doesn't appear cases are not being cited, although I don't know why they aren't showing up on the larger report, but we are regularly getting criminal caseload dockets of 30 to 40 people. Now, most of them don't come, but I didn't want to leave the impression that it seems like the police department's not doing anything, because we have these significant dockets. It's just that people aren't showing up. And again, I think that increase in the number of criminal citations is, another testament to the fact that the police department staffing finally seems to be leveling out and starting to pay off. So there's a lot of credit for the chief there, frankly, for getting this rolling. Yes.
To that point, under the section of crime and violation categories, can you help me understand where what reporting comes from? Because I'm hearing there's citations, which presumably are counted under citations, and then there's another category that you're pointing to. We're seeing very few. Is it come to fruition? Is it get actually a judgment rendered on it, or?
And so, and I think I talk about this someplace in here too, but citations and violations are two different things, but they're also the same thing. The citation is the piece of paper. The piece of paper has room for multiple violations, right? So we are getting citations. We're getting 30 of them. We're getting 40 of them. So those are individual people. And then we're getting on each citation probably an average of 2.5 offenses. There's some that have 4, some that have 1. And so the violations seem higher, but that's why. A lot of the violations, though, that we're seeing are things like failure to appear at court. You know, people are being picked up, and I use the word picked up loosely, picked up on warrants for having not appeared, get a citation to come back to court, but then get a citation for that failure to appear. So it's technically another citation, but it's this thing that kind of snowballs. We have these files with like a single citation for theft and 4 citations for failure to appear. So it makes it appear like some of those numbers are higher. Why they break out that way, I mean, I just don't know. That's just what the numbers are.
This area that you said some have plummeted in. Are we talking about individual boxes on that citation that in prior years there was more menacing, for instance? And I'm just trying to understand what you're pointing to as being, hey, there's been a drop in this. If it's not
Criminal-
violations or citations, it's particular violations.
Right. Criminal mischief has gone from 30 to 7. Resisting arrest, interference with the police officer went from 18 to 1. Physical harassment went from 17 to 8. Menacing went from 11 to 0. Those numbers are hard to explain, and I can't. It's
Can I add some context to this?
Yes.
yes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I think when you're looking at numbers like this, the biggest thing to remember is that these are only numbers that are showing up here in the municipal court. So this is really just a very small snapshot of maybe what a police investigation looks like. So when I look at things like menacing, by state statute, menacing is by words or actions putting somebody in fear of imminent serious physical injury. Normally where we see something like that is related to a domestic violence call. And in those cases, it's a mandatory arrest, a custody arrest. So when you see a menacing charge or you see a more serious assault charge, a lot of those are being booked into county jail. Or there's something more that maybe it starts as a menacing, but then ultimately escalates to something more serious like a physical assault. So, there's a number of reasons why, things like, why we're not seeing, citations for interfering with a police officer, resisting arrest. There's been some case law in the last couple of years that's talked about what we can, really charge and prosecute for when it comes to both of those things. So there's significant changes. So when you see these ebbs and flows, it's not necessarily just, in 3 years ago, cops were making more arrests, and then now the same thing's happening, but they're not making those arrests. It's maybe the behavior is the same, but the legal threshold and what we are able to arrest for and refer for prosecution is much different. And when you look at traffic citations, that again is just one snapshot of the entire traffic safety enforcement piece. So for us, you have, when I'm talking about traffic safety to the police officers and to our team, we're taking this more global approach. And what we do is we have to look at the number of traffic stops we're making as opposed to the citations that we write with those traffic stops. So in order to get a clearer picture, we really need to look deeper into the data. And when we provide our year-end report to the council this year, our annual report, we'll do like we did last year. We provided 2 years worth of data, but we'll give 3 years worth of data this coming year, and we'll add, try to give the context of how many stops we're making, how many of those are verbal warnings, and then how many of those are actually result in a citation. So I know that the traffic citation numbers have gone up significantly this year from last year, and when there's been an emphasis in the department since I came on board last year. But I also know there's an increase in the number of traffic stops that are not resulting in a traffic citation, and that's going to be at the officer's discretion. Our ultimate goal is to change behavior and gain compliance. So if we can do that with a mere traffic stop, a citation isn't always warranted. So it shows that there is an increase, but I think, when we go back and look at the numbers, I think, looking at the stops and everything else is going to be a little more telling as well as to what that increase actually looks like. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Although that actually leads me to something that isn't in my report, but is probably piggybacks on that pretty well, is in the last year and a half, the court has started taking a similar approach to some traffic offenses where the goal is to change behavior versus penalize people with a fine. And so people who get a citation for driving uninsured and who get insurance within that week, and they come in and say, hey, look, I got insurance. What we've been doing now is basically putting those cases on pause for 6 months and making that person come back and prove that in this intervening 6 months, they have had and maintained insurance. If they do, we will then dismiss that ticket, because the ultimate goal is you want people on the road who have insurance. If we just impose the fine and made them pay that, then they can't afford insurance, but they're still going to drive. And so in terms of a public safety approach, encouraging insurance is the approach we've been taking. And frankly, I would bet 95, 97% of the people who do that, in fact, maintain insurance. So it is working. And those people aren't coming back with repeat driving uninsured citations. They have sort of understood the importance of keeping insurance. The other positive note from the year was that we just very recently apparently got an agreement with the city shops to again start utilizing their services for community service, which now gives us a second option. The previous option that all we had for some time now was community sharing. Having this second option is going to be really beneficial, especially for people who have some skills or who are more physically capable than some of the people who we would send to community sharing. And we're kind of overloading community sharing with people. So it was hard for defendants to get hours. That was just a struggle. So we're slowly expanding that. And I believe we are exploring other, again, local agencies, just sort of reaching out to see if there are people who might be willing to do that. It's asking a lot of certain agencies to take on a person who is there because they committed a crime. And oftentimes, frankly, that crime is something like theft. And if you are an agency dealing with people and stuff, you might be concerned that your stuff gets stolen. So, I understand that it is a tough ask, but we're still trying to find entities who will take on that obligation or opportunity. So aside from that, I'm just happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Any questions? Counselor Merriday.
Thank you for being here tonight with us, Judge Fisher. I noticed several instances where you'd cited problems with the contract with Springfield Jail. One is getting the defendants that they're, when they're assigned for their sentencing to jail, have to get their own power, and that is an opportunity to miss their date, their internment date. I don't know whether the chief and between the two of you could discuss those issues. The other, that they were not willing to hold people until arraignment. So I don't.
So I'll starting with the transport issue. My understanding, and we're going to ask the Chief Twain, is it's just an issue of manpower. And when you do that, you're taking people off the streets. They're on shifts. They schedule it so that there are people in town. Now you have them running a taxi service. And if, for example, if we sentenced 3 people to jail and sent them all at the same time, they'd have to pull 3 officers off and send up 3 cars. And that's asking a lot.
We don't have 3 on.
And there you go. So we
We're
couldn't
already
do it.
outnumbered.
And so it's just not having an option here is obviously, I mean, that's an issue, is transportation. In terms of holding people before arraignment, that was an issue I talked about last year as well. I'll just repeat myself that when the interim administration at the police department entered into this contract, nobody ran it past anybody. We didn't know about it until it was already done. And so nobody bothered to ask us how we might deal with arraignments. Is that an issue? And the first few weeks, Springfield was taking people until they decided that they're not going to take people who aren't arraigned. And it was clear that that prior police administration was unaware of that. And so what happens now is, as I said in my report, I said last year, attendance at court is optional. If you never ever come, you can never be held. And that's, unless, I mean, they can't be held. So we have people, our docket of 40 people, you know, there are probably 10 who are just on this cycle.
Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Just the first issue with the transports, you know, with that, the judge is right. It's a manpower issue or staffing issue. And, you know, a lot of times, if we were at full staffing and we had staffing numbers that we had maybe 3 or 4 years ago, which were more than what we're currently allotted now, there was overlap in the shifts 1 day a week. And we've talked about that in the department. If we can create an overlap day again, where there's maybe like a day where we're fat with staffing numbers, but and then we could figure out on those days when there's court, if we could plan ahead and maybe be a little more strategic with it, how we could facilitate transports for those that were remanded to custody at court. The biggest issue that we've seen is when, you know, folks are told that they need to report for jail, and they show up at random times and say, I was told to show up and you guys need to give me a ride to Springfield. And we're like, okay, thanks for showing up, but we don't have a way to give you a ride to Springfield. The judge told you to report to serve your sentence. You need to go report and serve your sentence. And that's how it happens in other jurisdictions that have a contract with Springfield as well. But there are times, and we've talked with our city prosecutor, Mr. Baker. We actually had a conversation with him last week about somebody who was, we were really hoping to get him in custody so we could get him. He did not show up as they expected him to, but we were prepared to make that transport and get him up there. We had the staffing to do it. So trying to be a little bit more strategic in how we use our resources. But I think one of the biggest challenges is when, having a municipal court and looking at, these, the ability to do all of the things that, that the judge is describing here. All of that in the past went hand in hand with having, a municipal jail. So we've talked about all of those things, and I know that you all are aware of the reasons why at this point, just the cost and everything else to operate a municipal jail. So it's challenging for us. And I understand the frustrations from the judge as well, because nobody wants to see this revolving door. But in communities around the state that when they don't have these municipal jails, or they don't have the ability to have a transport unit or things like that, those cases are directly referred to the district attorney's office, and they're prosecuted in the circuit court. And then, when those arrests are made, those folks are booked into the county jails. So, that's something that, that I guess maybe moving forward in the future, we could consider what that looks like and what that would look like here in Cottage Grove if we wanted to have those conversations with the DA's office and the sheriff's office, and just a decision about whether or not we want to continue to try to prosecute these misdemeanors in municipal court, and if, and what the value to that is. So I'm not sure, ultimately where we want to go, but, it sounds like just, hearing the report last year, hearing the report this year, the frustrations with how things are going, clearly, we're not in a position to move forward at this point with reopening the jail. So what does that look like moving forward? And are they ultimately held accountable to the level that we were used to seeing here in years past? Probably not. But at this point, some may be better than none. So, and what we're hearing last year and this year is that there's nothing. I mean, essentially, so I think that's something for us to consider moving forward, how we want to do that, and what that looks like here in our community.
So am I to understand with what you said that the previous interim administration, police chief and city manager, that this is a contractual agreement that is preventing us from holding people until their arraignment in the county jail?
It's not,
I'm sorry, Springer.
not precisely, in that the contract doesn't address holding people prior to arraignment, but Springfield Jail has just decided it does. I think a plausible interpretation of the contract is it's not being honored because the language doesn't allow for what's happening. But that's not really my domain. We've had conversations with Springfield, and the response is, this is simply our policy. I don't know why it's not in your contract then, but that's simply what we're told. So other options remain: exploring Lane County Jail, who does hold people pre-arraignment, subject to a very stringent release matrix. That is its own animal that is a little unique to Lane County. Other county jails have release matrices, but none are, I don't think, as aggressive as Lane County. And the sheriff has told us years ago they would treat us different if we paid for beds. And we had those meetings with the prior chief and the prior city manager, and nothing ever came of that. So I don't know if that's an option that can be explored, but.
This revolving door is definitely not working that we have going on in Oregon. And, and people tend to be in their own community and will tell each other, you know, you don't show up for court, it doesn't matter, there's no repercussions for it. And so that's a bit alarming when we read it, that there's nothing, and then being told it's, you know, basically a problem that we can't fix. We're going to have some serious conversations about how we can change that for Cottage Grove, because I mean, just our uncollected fees and there's, you know, just, it just doesn't make sense. And even hearing about, while I understand the insurance thing, you know, there's also another layer to that, well, I'll just drive till I get caught and then I'll get insurance. And so, you know, just hopefully people won't do that and they'll understand that there should be some repercussions for it. Chief? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to, I mean, in regard to the contract with the Springfield Jail, just a quick point of clarification. The verbiage that is in that contract that we have is the same that they offer to everybody that they contract with. And they do have policies that are maybe above and beyond what the legal threshold may be, but I think it's important to note that you know, I think that what they're doing, it's their facility. They paid for it, they built it, and they have a contract with several jurisdictions to rent bed space to them. So I think when it comes to the policies that they set, and what they will or will not accept is on them. And I don't know that we're in breach of contract. I think that is maybe not a fair criticism of them. They've been a great partner for us. And with the county jail, I've had those conversations with the sheriff as well. The cost that that we get, the price, I guess you could say that we're charged for bed space at Springfield is cheaper than what it would cost us at the county jail. So I've had those conversations, and when we came down to our budget conversations last year, and Mr. Sauerwein and I were talking about ways to to kind of trim the budget as best we could. We reduced our contract expenses with Springfield by almost $100,000. So when we were looking to decrease, our overall expenses and really get the services that we're paying for, it made more sense for us to stick with that contract rather than to try to enter into a different contract that wouldn't really solve some of the issues that we're currently having, because it's really just bed space to hold people when they've been sentenced, and at a greater cost than it costs us with Springfield. So there's all of those things to consider. But I do think at some point we should, we need to have that bigger conversation about what it looks like and, how we're holding people accountable. But I also want to make sure that the community understands that what we're talking about in this problem as it exists, this is only one piece of the criminal justice system, and this is only one piece of accountability for criminal behavior in Cottage Grove. And these are what are most of the time front and center. These are the things that we see because we call these quality of life issues. And so they're those day-to-day issues that our community sees. But this is not reflective of, the more serious crimes. And I just want to make sure that the public understands that this looks much different when we're dealing with serious criminal behavior, felony criminal behavior, and things like that. So those are all a completely different process, and those take up a significant portion of our resources as well. So, our police officers are out there, even though we've been short-staffed. They, I think with what we have had, I think the product that we're getting has been really good. And I think they're really, they're working really hard. And what I see them putting up on a month-to-month basis as individuals is keeping pace with departments that have, much more resources. So I think per capita, we're the officers that we've hired and those that we've invested in, we're getting a lot of return on our investment right now. So, and I'm encouraged for where we're going moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I appreciate both of you being here. It's really helpful. Because, you know, thinking about, you have your domain, chief is, you know, chief over his domain, and what is ours? You know, what is our purpose here? And as I'm sketching this out, we are tasked with creating policy that has the aim, I hope we're all in agreement on the aim of minimizing crimes committed. So there's crimes committed, that's a stat that would love to, we're not going to probably know because it depends on whether the crimes are reported, but that hopefully is a stat that we can actually look at. So crimes, how many crimes are actually reported? Then how many citations for violations, individual violations are referenced on that? And then how many actually get to the judge and a judgment is rendered and there's a conviction? And then how many actually serve those sentences? So the whole kind of ecosystem of accountability, you know, I think when residents cry out, we want accountability for actions, they're really meaning crimes committed to you know, judgment rendered and punishment served. So one of the things I'm listening for here are things that intuitively, I think, if there's no mechanism of accountability, you're going to see crime rise because criminals feel more free. So that's a problem. So we have to address that somewhere, where best to address that. And part of it is, do we have good enough, are we looking at the data that we need to see if our assumptions are making sense? So, you know, this recent trend, I want to know how recent is this trend in a decline in people showing up? Because I would correlate that to how quickly has the word spread on the street of how to avoid accountability for actions. And I understand we are talking about, there's traffic violations, there's these up to misdemeanor violations, quality of life issues that we all feel, thefts, you know, disorderly conduct, I'm sure, like ordinance violations. And then it sounds like the felony style, the violent crimes, those things are being handled. I'm not hearing any issue, you know, at least it seems like the justice system is potentially working there in a satisfactory manner. So can both of you speak to how are we to look into this? We have a report that gets to these, the numbers are issued. We have police reports that are issued. I've looked up FBI stats. We had a real problem here with data disappearing in prior years and not being able to look at things over history. Yeah, can we speak to that so that we can actually make good policy?
Chief.
Mayor, Councilor Urban, I think those are all really good questions. And I think the biggest thing is you kind of touched on this. I think you're correct, right? We have to look at not just, you know, the number of citations that are ending up in, you know, in the municipal court. I mean, because it'd be very easy for me to look at that and go, well, look at all these numbers are down, right? That means that we're, you know, that crime must be down in direct correlation to that. It's not always as simple as that. And I'm, you know, I can't sit here and just say, well, look at what a wonderful job we're doing. It's because all these things are down. There's so many different things that we have to look at. We have to look at, you know, the criminal activity that's being reported. And so we need to go back and look at, just like what I was kind of talking about, how do you paint the bigger picture with traffic enforcement, right? How many traffic stops are our officers making as opposed to writing citations, the number of violations, all that kind of stuff. We need to do that with behavior that's being reported and crimes that are being reported. So we need to go back in and that will be in all of the numbers that we report out again this year. I think we're going to see in some instances, we'll see some significant increases because of another point that you mentioned, which is the data and how it's being captured. And I know that there were gaps in how we were capturing data in the past, and even some of the data that we presented last year, and some things that we've done to kind of correct that this year to make sure that the information that we're reporting out is much more accurate. But it's only as accurate as the information that we put into these systems, right? We have to put good quality and accurate information into our reporting systems in order to be able to get it back out. And that was our biggest challenge when I got here is how we were inputting all of that information into our data systems. And we know, and I know in reviewing last year's numbers, that there were some significant gaps in certain things. So, but there is this broader picture. And so, we have a couple of different systems that we review to pull those numbers. So I think that gives us maybe a more accurate reflection of what the level of activity is in Cottage Grove. But the last piece of that you talked about was unreported criminal activity. And that's extremely hard to quantify or to capture, because we don't know what we don't know. And we encourage people to report, and we've done things like add our online reporting. It's multilingual. We've tried to do things to break down some of those barriers, or to encourage people to report things to us, not because we want to see our crime numbers jump, but we want a more accurate reflection of what's actually going on. And we want people to know that that if they report those things, that they are going to get service from the Cottage Grove Police Department. So we're doing everything we can to try to increase, it seems like, maybe counterproductive to what we're trying to show we're doing, to say that we're looking for more criminal activity, but that's what we want, is just an accurate reflection. We don't want to, increase those number by any means, but if it's actually what's going on, we need to know that, because we can't properly respond and deploy our resources if we don't have that accurate picture. So I think there's a lot of information that would give us pretty good context. And I'm hoping that, when we get our annual report done after the first of the year, and we do this annual look back into 2024 and compare it to 23 and 22, we'll hopefully have a little more accurate numbers this year.
Counselor Lammerman.
So looking at the fines and revenue, it shows for the last year, from November of last year till October of this year, there's been roughly 200,000 fines, and there's 162,000 outstanding. We've only collected 37,000. What kind of follow-up really is being done to try to mitigate some of that outstanding? Because in looking at this, it almost seems like it's okay to be lawless, or only the people obeying the laws are paying their fines. Like, it seems really weird to me that only 37,000 out of 200,000 has been collected or paid on.
The comment that only law-abiding people pay their fines is pretty accurate. One of the big problems that is reflected in that is the change in the law. It's probably, I lose track of time, 3-4 years ago now, where previously, when a person didn't pay a traffic fine, the court could suspend that person's driver's license, which then, for people who cared, would incentivize them to come back and pay their fine so that they could get their driver's license reinstated. There are a lot of people who don't care, and they just keep driving. But there are people who would get caught with a suspension and say, oops, and they come in and pay it. There were people who let these rack up until, for some reason, nothing changed in their life, and they needed to legally drive, maybe because of a job, a kid, something like that. And so they would come back around and start paying fines. We can no longer do that. So when a person doesn't pay a fine, there is no consequence because the legislature decided there shouldn't be. And so what we've got left is to refer them to a collection agency. Again, people who care they'll eventually catch that. Most of the people who, though, are in that category don't live in the world that involves credit, so they don't care. That keeps us from really enforcing that, other than if a person came in and agreed to a payment plan and then decided not to pay, while we can't suspend their license for that, we could cite them for contempt and drag them into court on essentially a criminal status and threaten them with jail. But we just had a discussion about the utility of that. So that's a non-starter. So where we are now is for people, in fact, there's an interesting inverse here where we do better when people don't appear for traffic court. Because if a person doesn't appear, then we can impose the full fine and suspend their license. That gets people's attention. So the more people who don't come, we get more fines out of that. And we get the opportunity to incentivize payment by suspending them. But if they come to court, agree to a payment arrangement, walk out and never see us again, there's nothing you can do about that.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Two thoughts. Are public service options open for traffic fines?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now, I apologize in advance. This next suggest is public shaming an option. I've seen these with sandwich board, sentenced to the corner. I've been very bad. I've been driving without insurance. Like, if we don't have, if you take all the teeth out of anything, what is left?
I just purely, the city might be able to pursue some civil options. That might be worth exploring. But again, these are people who just don't exist in a world where that's going to matter. You can sue these people, you could cite them for contempt and fine them, you could sentence them to community service. But if they don't do it, then they don't do it and there's no consequence. If they don't pay, there's no consequence. And just to be clear, the feeling is that if not in the upcoming, in a subsequent legislative session, the odds are we will be seeing the ability to suspend for failure to appear go away as well. Just because there is a movement over the last 4 or 5 years directed at seeing driving less as a privilege, more as a right. And so the ability for courts to take that away or infringe upon it is not in favor at the moment.
So we just need new people in Salem. Add that to the list. Anyone else? Yeah. Thank you so much, Judge.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item B, FEMA pre-implementation compliance measures. Associate City Planner Lenny Crow.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. So I promised you originally a PowerPoint and I do have it available for you tonight. So we are gonna briefly go over this again and then really get into the nitty gritty. So FEMA administers the National Flood Insurance Program, what's called the NFIP. Through the NFIP, property owners, renters, businesses can receive flood insurance that is backed by the federal government. Participation in the NFIP is required for community members to receive federal flood insurance and federally backed loans in the floodplain, as well as receive response and recovery funding for federally declared disasters. The NFIP requires local communities to adopt the floodplain development ordinance, which Cottage Grove last updated in 2021. This regulates development in the floodplain in accordance with federal, state, and local requirements. Okay, so why are we here? So in 2009, FEMA was sued by various environmental agencies alleging development in Oregon was harmful to threatened and endangered species. FEMA settled, agreeing to consult the National Marine Fisheries Services on how to address the impacts that NFIP development had on these species. In 2016, the National Marine Fisheries Services released a final biological opinion, or BIOP, regarding the implementation of the NFIP in Oregon. Basically, the BIOP found that the development that was authorized under the NFIP reduced the quantity and quality of habitat that jeopardized the continued existence of the certain threatened or endangered species. Specifically for Cottage Grove, we are in a critical salmon habitat. Long story short, FEMA took a little bit too long in getting the new rules and regulations out. And they were sued again in September of last year. And so in July, they reached out to communities with these pre-implementation compliance measures so that in the interim, communities will be required to implement the PICM choice that ensures that the threatened and endangered species identified in the BIOP are adequately protected. Next slide, please. So there are 239 communities and 31 counties within the Oregon BIOP area. Only 5 communities do not participate in the NFIP, and only 5 counties were not included in this. PICM impacts all of these 239 communities and 31 counties. This is not a localized problem. Next slide. A little hard to tell, but I tried to get the full map. Cottage Grove is right in the middle, which is that essential fish habitat for the salmon. Next slide. So there are 3 choices for the pre-implementation compliance measures for PICM. This is to ensure compliance with federal standards, state standards, and local. One option is the model ordinance. FEMA basically took the state's model floodplain code and manipulated it so that it became compliant with their standards. Another option is the permit by permit. This requires applicants to provide what's called a habitat assessment that proves that there is no net loss associated with development. One thing to note really quick is that both the model ordinance and the permit by permit option achieve the same goal, no net loss of habitat. These habitat assessments are to be reviewed by quote unquote qualified professionals, also created by them, which FEMA has left to the communities to define. For the model ordinance, qualified professional means appropriate subject matter expert that is defined by the community. Cottage Grove currently does not have this term defined, which is not a bad thing. After clarification was requested of FEMA, they said that if the community does not have it defined, then theoretically, a local homeowner could submit the habitat assessment as long as it met the requirements. Last option is to prohibit all development in the floodplain. This includes if a house is damaged or destroyed, they cannot rebuild. Any expansion, such as placing a new pad for an HVAC system, would be prohibited. No new driveways, no new access. All development is not allowed. So FEMA's revising the habitat assessment that I sent out on Friday to you folks to make it more clear and pertinent, as it is currently the 41-page document that you saw. but it was originally used in the Puget Sound and does not fully apply to Oregon. The Department of Land Conservation and Development, or DLCD, the entity who will end up reviewing our code that is brought to them, and FEMA are working on revising the model ordinance so that it is compliant with state and federal standards. Both of these are expected to be done by mid-December. What I've presented to you over the past month has been the most up-to-date information we have, and it does keep evolving, even if the words kind of sound the same. Staff does plan on returning each month to update council on the new information received so that the city of Cottage Grove and council can make the most informed decision for our residents. Next slide. So I know I've talked to you a few times about this now, and I have recommended the permit by permit approach. It is still the case tonight. But I wanted to look at what that actual permit by permit looks like. So basically, the things that are on the screen are the items that are required out of the habitat assessment. A lot of this is already included in our floodplain development permits. I am working with other local communities, legal counsel, DLCD, and FEMA to create a model permit for applicants to use that make sure that they touch on all of these points. This can be done through a site plan and narrative, which, as I said, is the requirement of our current code. And FEMA has acknowledged that that is acceptable. Given the development that I've personally witnessed in Cottage Grove since I've been here, and the knowledge I've gained from the 1.5 years+ of communication with FEMA, the state, and other local communities, I am confident that we can create something that is user-friendly, but also meets all local, state, and federal requirements. Next slide. So staff has been in communication with FEMA, and FEMA has said to all communities that if the floodplain managers are attending webinars and are communicating their choices, they understand that this process takes time. They were not fully aware of the Oregon land use system, and so it kind of forced communities into a corner. Most communities actually will not be ready to implement these rules and start collecting data by January 31st of next year, as you can see as a requirement from them. Just for your reference, I personally have attended 6 different workshops and webinars, a session at the Northman Conference last year, it's the local floodplain group for our region. Requested technical assistance from FEMA to help support our community, and have corresponded with the FEMA Pick'em questions email multiple times, specifically regarding the new maps. FEMA and DLCD also presented to the Oregon Floodplain Managers Group that I run specifically regarding Pick'em options back on October 21st. And I know that legal counsel has also attended numerous webinars and workshops. As you can see, communities must have adopted and be implementing their chosen option by July 31st of next year. While communities have the opportunity to choose an option, if no choice is made, FEMA will assign a default option, which is permit by permit. FEMA is still developing its guidance on what data collection and reporting will look like, but overall, it will be the amount of fill and compository storage in the floodplain, amount of new impervious surfaces, area of clearing and grading, trees removed that are greater than 6 inches in diameter, breast height, track areas disconnected and or reconnected to the floodplain, and mitigation provided. Next slide. So a good question was raised on Friday by Councilor Lemmerman. Can we change our mind? And the answer is yes, for a short time. All I need to email FEMA by December 1st is what path we want to explore and potentially adopt. We have until July 31st, 2025 to have something adopted. Once the new information is released in mid-December, staff will focus on drafting code language. Staff's goal is to start the code amendment process by January or February, bring it before Planning Commission in February, March for the first public hearing, hold the second public hearing before council March and April, with adoption by April 2025. The city's chosen approach would then take effect in May of 2025. This anticipated schedule affords some extra time in case there needs to be revisions or if the choice has changed. Again, staff recommends that council direct the city to pursue the permit by permit approach. Such direction tonight ensures that the city is compliant with its December 1 notification deadline. Okay. I will bring this back to council after staff receives the updated habitat assessment and model ordinance. Carrie, is there anything that you wanted to add before I open up for questions?
More policy rather than legal considerations. First off, I just want you to know how incredibly accomplished Lenny is, and what a great job Lenny has done as the acknowledged expert in this area. She organized and leads the Oregon Floodplain Managers Group, which is provides, and then as your floodplain manager and as the floodplain manager for many jurisdictions, they're giving a lot of information and absorbing a lot and implementing it. So I'm so impressed. I just want to reiterate that this initial step just keeps the city in compliance with FEMA's direction to date. FEMA continues to evolve. The flexibility with implementation continues to move as FEMA becomes more familiar with, as Lenny said, Oregon land use law and clear and objective requirements. But it just seems, from a policy perspective, definitely in the city's best interest to not risk losing federally backed mortgage in the floodplain, maintaining its status, which you don't want to hike flood insurance rates. And just to stay in a cooperative position with FEMA as opposed to an oppositional position so that you can communicate issues that you're having as you try to move forward, as opposed to simply digging in heels and refusing and then forcing FEMA's hand. That's my concern. Also, I think your staff has some good perspectives on this. If Faye or Mike have any input they want to add, that could be helpful.
I would just briefly say that last Friday, met with Faye and Lenny and our city attorney, and we reviewed the city's options. And my recommendation is certainly that you follow our in-house expert and also the advice of your city attorney. And I would certainly like to echo what Carrie said about working with Lenny. She's not just our expert, she's really an expert regionally and also has shown some real leadership in this area on statewide organizations. I thank her for that.
Questions? Councilor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. Want to thank you, Lenny, for coming down and sharing with us. So speaking with a lot of other communities and mayors in towns, it sounds like a lot of them are going with a model ordinance. Why would you be recommending that we go with the permit by permit?
Great question. I think personally, the permit by permit has a little bit more flexibility with how we can approach it and how we can require our residents to provide the information. Again, both standards get to the same point. And to be honest, there are some communities that are choosing both so that we give our residents options. I personally don't see a problem with that. It's just for the amount of development that we get here in Cottage Grove in the floodplain and our CRS 6 rating, the permit by permit option seemed to be the better choice given our circumstances. I am open to both. I would encourage the direction given tonight, if that's the case, to make sure that the model ordinance is clear and objective, because what was originally given was not. And that might be our biggest hurdle, is making sure that that model ordinance is acceptable to the state. Because if it's not, then our code will not get adopted because it has to go through the state. So permit by permit at this point in time, with the information that I have, is the best option for us to move forward. Like I mentioned before, I plan to come before you. If we have it under December 1 or January, then we can reassess this. But given what's on the table right now, it is, in my professional opinion, the best choice for Cottage Grove.
I just want to dovetail on that. I believe that advice is based because on the number of development permits that have been received i.e. zero, in the past however many years. I'm for,
I think I've seen two in Cottage Grove over the past 2 years. Those were the inspections. We don't get floodplain permits often.
so if you were going to be receiving many, or if all of your property was in a floodplain, all of your developable land and residential developable land, maybe I might have chatted with Lenny a little bit more, because many of my cities are going the model ordinance approach. But your situation was distinguishable.
Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. The site plan correlates with the permit by permit specifically, or is that something that you might require under an ordinance as well?
Mayor, Councilor Urban, to clarify, are you asking if we went with the model ordinance, would we still require the site plan? So we require that anyway. A standard site plan, given the model mock-up application they sent you, that information is pretty much already required. The additional aspects here on a very surface level are the mitigation plans and how we mitigate, impacted species habitat.
So you'd be adding mitigation aspects to an already existing site plan requirement. And so it's a minimal extra lift, presumably.
Correct. And to make a point, the habitat assessment document, the 41-page one, I know it's being revised as it currently stands. It says that communities are able to have staff assist with applications. And so knowing what exactly FEMA is requiring of us, I am able to help with the site plan. I cannot create it. Burden of proof is on the applicant per state law. However, I would have the opportunity to say, hey, this is your mitigation ratio, right? And you can show that on the site. Narratives are required anyway. And so it's just tying all of that.
And under either circumstance, this qualified professional as defined by the community, either the ordinance path or the permit path require that this assessment be done to prove that there's no net loss of habitat, but maybe it would be better served in the permit path just because we have so few coming to us that you don't need it to spread across, a broad.
There's two considerations there. The first is yes. So in answer to your question, yes, permit by permit would address that. But second, if you went the model ordinance route, there's a chance/likelihood that a future amendment would be required. And so this may be a minimal amendment that could be undertaken now. And then if a more extensive amendment process is ultimately required, you can do that later. But this is the minimal amount of process and adoption and disruption of your code and your development department that meets FEMA's, one of FEMA's options.
And it seems like you're looking for direction. I would share that I'd be in favor of the permit by permit process as recommended.
Counselor Merida.
I believe in some point in our discussions that with the permit by permit, that we were able to utilize local expertise and not rely on outside guidance, which was appealing to me.
Yes, because Cottage Grove does not have that term defined, we are able to define it ourselves. And so that is where the avenue of, we don't have to, we can utilize the expertise that is within.
Do we have a consensus on this permit by permit?
Thank you, Mayor Council. I will come back with more information when I have it, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Grow. You don't need a motion. I mean, it was provided in motion.
It's more of a, I need just and
Direction.
Carrie, correct me, I just need direction as to what I email FEMA tonight. And then going forward, we will go through the entire land use process where it goes before public hearings and it's more of a.
I guess my only question is, in order to initiate a development code amendment, is a motion required? I know that to respond to FEMA consensus is sufficient. I don't know the answer to that, but maybe it would be helpful. Thank you. Let's just cover all our bases.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that city staff pursue the permit by permit path for compliance with FEMA's requirements.
I'll second.
Okay, can a friendly amendment be including any initiating a development code amendment as needed?
And developing amendment to this motion would be to amend the
Initiate.
development code
Yeah, there you go.
accordingly.
Second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Lenny. Concerns of council. Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I wanted to share appreciation for the concern expressed in our packet regarding hours of the library. I was illuminating that, how well used the library services are, in particular on Saturday, as as we all know, schedules go, what's available for childcare and whatnot. So I'd love to see and pursue looking at potentially a different day. I understand our budget constraints. And perhaps there's a weekday that could take the place of a Saturday, or at least look at the implications or the impact of that. And so it can be weighed out. In addition to that, I'm sure we will have more discussion in the future weeks and months. But I wanted to plant the seed to consider in an effort to sync up with the school district, offering to move our dates for meeting potentially to a Tuesday, so that they could be offset and we could have a representative go to a school board meeting, give a report back to council on what was going on there, and welcome someone from the school board to reciprocate that, so that we can stay better informed about what's going on, and so we can collaborate as a community better. So I just wanted to plant that seed just when we're talking about council goals and future and meetings and whatnot.
Or another option is to keep it on Monday and just switch the Mondays, because right now. Anyone else? No. Well, I just want to say I will not be here at the December 9th meeting, but I will be Zooming in. And so I'm asking Council President, Councilor Irvin, to hold down the fort for me. And that is all I have. Business from the city manager.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, and members of the council. I'm passing out a PowerPoint presentation to you. I just wanted to follow up on comments that were made. Included in your packet is a list of letters that we received from folks regarding changes in the hours of the library, and some of the very legitimate concerns that people raised, and simply wanted to discuss that a little bit. Understand that our goal as city staff is to make data-driven decisions that are in the best long-term interest of the city. Next slide here. And that certainly includes any kind of financial decisions that we make. Next slide. As we discussed last month, we had our first quarterly budget update. And when we began this year, we estimated that our cash carryover balance was going to be about $2.2 million. Now, understand that we start the budgeting process in March, And sometimes we don't even get our bills for the last month or two of the fiscal year until we're into September or October. So part of what we do when we do our quarterly budget update for the first quarter is try to true up that starting balance. And in the course of doing that, we found that the difference was a little over $300,000. So as we discussed last month, we are taking some steps to address that difference. First of all, we're not filling vacant positions. Second, we're reorganizing some city staff. We'll get more information to you later about that. And we're also scrutinizing our purchasing decisions. So how does this impact the library and hours of operation? Well, we have a vacant position for a librarian. And, as a result of having that vacant position, which we're not filling at this time, we have adjusted our hours of operation. Effective December 1st, the library will be open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and closed on Saturdays and Sundays. The reason for this is because Saturday tends to be our lowest average daily head count within the library. And I'm not going to read through all of these numbers, but we took a look at the 2023-2024 average daily head count throughout the year. And as you can see, the lowest number each month tends to be Saturday. Now, this is also true in the second quarter of October, November, December. And I'm jumping ahead here, hang on. One more, please. Oh, that's okay, one more. Just as full disclosure, if you take a look at the month of January 2014, you'll see that the average daily count for Saturday was significantly higher. That's because we had our Be Excited About Reading Fair, where we had 241 people on one Saturday. And those of you that know me well know that there's nothing I'm more excited about than putting books in the hands of children. So just full disclosure, if we do have an event like that, it certainly does impact the average daily count. And again, looking at the April, May, June time period, once again, as you can see that Saturday was the slowest day. So just to be clear, as a response to the city's current financial situation, the vacant librarian position is not being filled at this time. The librarian position has not been eliminated from the 2024-2025 budget. And, if we're able to right the ship financially, perhaps later this year, we could fill that position. But based on the average daily head count, the library's hours of operation are being adjusted. Now, having said that, I remember in college, one of my favorite classes was statistics, and a professor assigned a book that was called How to Lie with Statistics. And the numbers sometimes don't always tell the full story. And as is outlined in some of the letters that we've received from folks, the Saturday hours, even though there may be physically less people, are very important to folks. So, I will be meeting with the librarian this week. With Thanksgiving's a bit of a mulligan, but I will be meeting with the librarian, and we will be talking about some other options, based on what we heard from citizens and also from the council this evening.
Thank you. Councilor Merida.
Thank you, Mayor. Manager Sauerwein, I'm wondering if as you pointed out, when they had the book event, there was a large crowd on Saturday, and many times in the past, there have been Saturday activities at the library.
Absolutely.
If we could incorporate the Friends of the Library into generating more events on Saturday, we could increase our numbers perhaps to justify moving that closure date away from Saturday.
And like I said, sometimes statistics are a function of effort. And, moving events from weekdays to Saturdays, some of our kickoff events for different reading activities throughout the course of the year, are on weekdays or Saturday afternoons or whatever.
Councilor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council, Mr. Sauerwein, looking at the numbers, let's just say for June 2024, on a Saturday, it's only showing 68 people roughly showed up. The rest of the days are into the hundreds. Is there any numbers showing how many of those were coming to use a computer versus to check out a book per se?
You know, our librarian keeps some very accurate statistics on different things like that. Could certainly look into it. Just anecdotally from my time being in the library, obviously, if you're there on a Thursday afternoon, there's a very good chance that a lot of kids are going to be on computers, you know, after school, doing their homework or looking stuff up rather than checking out books. I think it's very important to always remember that librarians and libraries are not just about books. There's a lot more services that are provided by our libraries than just checking out books.
And then is there any data on percentage of children versus adults using the library?
I'm not sure if we have refined our headcount numbers by age. I certainly can, we certainly could look into something like that going forward, but understand that these are statistics that are being taken by the folks who are working at the front desk. And, you know, sometimes age is in the eye of the beholder. I will tell you, I'm terrible at telling whether somebody's 18 or 37. I mean, it's, you know, hard decision to make sometimes.
Well, I mean, children like,
Yeah.
obviously under 15, like they're still middle school, elementary school, or
Sure.
or somebody like us. Obviously, we're older adults, but
Again, this is purely anecdotal, but I think that you're more likely to see parents with their kids together on a Saturday and more likely to see kids by themselves, you know, at the library after school time.
yeah, I guess my main thing is just trying to see if the library is being utilized more by school-age children or if it's being utilized more by grown adults or unhoused or however that demographic would kind of fall in there.
Yeah, as I say, I think it goes without saying that during non-school times, you're going to see a lot more kids in the library of school age.
Well, that being said, I would just think that on a Saturday with the amount of outcries for Saturday to be open, the numbers would kind of represent that a little bit, but they don't.
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, our goal is to make data-driven decisions that are in the best long-term interest of the city. Purely looking at the data, that was the reason we made the decision that we did.
We're heading into 9 o'clock. So are you guys okay with us? Okay, we'll extend.
I am, yeah, I have a really, it depends on how much longer this is.
Counselor Irvin?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just when I was contemplating this, I was thinking, and I appreciated the suggestion about if you can move certain programming around, you can kind of potentially have the best of both worlds of serving the folks that were routinely, I don't even know if that's accurate, but I assume that there's going to be a unique count and then there's going to be total counts. I imagine there's a lot of turn or unique, non-unique numbers that are represented throughout the week. But the fact that there's certain populations that could be served and then wouldn't get to be served through removing a Saturday when that was the only, and that's what came through in those letters, to cut off that resource when you could probably potentially shift around some of the other programming was the strongest case for me to say, yeah, I think we can accommodate these, potentially accommodate these requests, even if the numbers don't bear out on total volume. But it would be nice also to have unique to get some sort of a feel for, you know, how recurring are these visits through the week versus on the weekends.
Report from city attorney. You have 1 minute.
Did that conclude your report? Okay, city manager. I was like, well, I'm just trying to jump right on in. Well, just I really appreciate the opportunity to continue to assist this highly professional and wonderful staff. I got the opportunity to weigh in on pretty much everything that you heard this evening, all the action items at least, and I just feel impressed and fortunate, and I hope you guys realize how great these the staff is. I'm providing, or I'm part of the council training that's a week from Thanksgiving. So Thursday, December 5th, 9 to noon for this group and incoming counselors. I think my training portion is an hour, and I'll be here the whole time though to answer quick questions and kind of round out that training. So I look forward to that opportunity. And I just wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, with your families and chosen families.
Thank you, everyone.
Did I?
You did it.
Mayor,
With, oh,
just quickly,
Mr. Stewart.
as you exit, I did hand an item to the mayor, has 4 squares on it. The request from our city recorder is to have each of you sign each of those blocks. So I just want to make sure if you haven't done that before you leave, please do. Thank
They
you.
all did.
Oh, it's done. Good. Thank you.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.